All right, welcome back everybody to Bike to Campus Week 2020. My name is Nick Goodfellow. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the University of Pittsburgh. Bike to Campus Week is a collaborative effort between University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, and Bike Pittsburgh to welcome new riders to Pittsburgh campuses. This year, we've turned the event into a virtual festival with more than a dozen sessions to cover all the essentials for starting a bike commute. A few notes: this session is being recorded and will be available to watch starting next week on the Bike Pittsburgh YouTube page. All participants have been muted. If you'd like to ask a question, just please write it in the chat and myself and the presenters, we will answer it. Finally, please take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat. Your name, what campus or organization you're affiliated with, how long you've been riding, or what you want to learn about today, just so that we get a better sense of who's with us. So today we're going to talk about how to get your bike ready for a commute. We've got two great guests with us. We have Bruce Chan and Karen Brooks, both Bike Pittsburgh board members and do other things besides being on the Bike Pittsburgh board. So I'll let you two take it away.
So hi, Karen Brooks, and I am the bike consultant for Carnegie Mellon University. Besides being on the board of Bike Pittsburgh, I also do a bunch of bike education stuff for CMU and for just around town, different places, at the Wheel Mill and some other places. Bruce, take it away.
Hello, so my name is Bruce Chan. I am an urban designer and architect here in Pittsburgh. I got my master's actually at CMU, and so was commuting between my house in Bloomfield to CMU in Oakland for about a year. So really try to understand, coming from Los Angeles, how to commute, particularly in the wintertime and in our narrow streets. And now I'm on the Bike Pittsburgh board, helping to also educate and promote biking and safety here in Pittsburgh. So really happy to have everyone here. Karen and I go way back. So we're just gonna talk through kind of our mindset when we are preparing to go on a commute, but also when friends of ours ask us, hey, Bruce, hey, Karen, just found a bike in my basement, really want to start riding, but don't really know what to do with this bike that might have been sitting here in the basement for a while. What do I need? How do I prepare the bike? How do I prepare me? How do I prepare getting to, bike either for fun or to go to work? So Karen, how would you, if someone came up to you and was like, hey, I found this bike, I don't really know if it fits, I don't really know the condition, what are some of the things I should look for? What would you tell them?
Great question, Bruce. We had an awesome session about bike fit, but that's a little bit more of a complicated question. There's some good resources that we have in a link sheet about that. General rule of thumb, I'm going to switch my camera around. If you can stand over the top tube of the bike and have 2 to 3 inches of clearance with your feet flat on the ground in front of the saddle, that's a good rule of thumb that it's a decent fit. Other than that, if the bike fits and you just pulled it out of the back of the garage and you want to make sure that it's good to go, we have a little something called the ABC Quick Check. And that stands for air, brakes, chain, quick release, and an overall check. And this is something you can do not just when you're getting a new, like a bike ready for the first time, but I like to do it pretty often if I'm commuting. Especially for the air, I check that before every ride. So your tires need air, obviously. Naturally, air will leave the tires just over time. So that's something that I check before every ride, just to make sure that they're good to go. I have a pump here with a gauge. That's really handy. If you don't have a floor pump, you can use a small pump like this, something good to have just to bring on your commute. You can also get a separate gauge like this to show you. What the gauge tells you is exactly how much pressure is in the tire. Every tire is going to have a guide on it. This one is really handy, nice to see. You can see it says 75 max PSI. That's the maximum amount of pressure you can have in the tire, 75 PSI. Some tires will have a range, like, 30 to 60 PSI, for example. That stands for pounds per square inch. How much pressure is enough pressure? There's actually a pretty good range. So I also keep these tires, they're kind of a little bit fatter than normal road tires. And so I keep them a little lower so that I can go over potholes and bumps and things like that. And they'll absorb some of the rough stuff on the roads. You don't want them so low that if you hit something, the tire goes all the way into the rim, because that can give you what's called a pinch flat. That the tube inside will get pinched, you get a hole in it. What I like to do is when I use my pump to pump up the tires, I then give a squeeze with my thumb and forefinger like this. Some people do it like this. And that actually helps me calibrate my fingers so that I don't have to use the pump every time. Before I go on a ride, I just give a quick squeeze and say, okay, that's enough pressure, or, oh, I need to pump it up a little bit. Just as an example, see how much this is squishing right now? That's definitely too much. I need to put some more air in there. I think this tire actually has a slow leak. So A for air. So a couple other things to check with your tires are just to make sure that the tread is good. These are brand new, so I know that they have a good tread. Make sure they're not worn on the sides. Make sure there's no threads showing. Make sure there's no little cracks in the tire. I actually have an example of a worn out tire. You want to see? This is my cargo bike, and actually it's not too bad, but these tires are pretty old. Can you see the cracks right there? That's not good. Ideally, I'd want to replace this tire. This, by the way, is a nice city tire that's got like a smoother tread, and it also has some protection. There's like a nice layer underneath there to protect against things puncturing the tire. So I'm back over here. So that's air of the ABC Quick Check. Any questions really quick? Air is by far the most important thing.
So what does B stand for again, Karen? Can you, are we going to move over to B? I believe it's brakes. Is that right?
You are correct. Brakes.
Yes, brakes are very important. What are some of the types of brakes that are out there, and what should people be looking for, really? If the brakes work, if they're worn, and if not working, they go maybe to get their brakes fixed up and tightened.
Yeah, so the easiest way to tell if your brakes are in good working order is to squeeze the lever and make sure that the brakes actually stop the wheel before the lever gets all the way to the handlebar. I like to actually spin the wheel and then squeeze the brake lever and make sure it stops before the lever gets all the way to the handlebar. Bruce, do you happen to have a flat bar bike that you could show this?
I do. Let me switch over to my camera. So here in my alley, I got my bike, right? And I've already checked the tires. So the tires have nice air in them. I don't need that. So now I'm going to go over to the B for my brakes. So my brakes right here, nice and tight. This is for the back brake, right? We have two brakes, one in the front and one in the back. So you got to make sure both of them are nice and tight. So my back one's nice. My front one's nice as well. And I'm going to start squeezing so you can see how it kind of goes. So some of the issues you might encounter with your brake is the pad. If you have this type of brake, sometimes this will be worn. It's a pad. They're on both sides. And you can easily go, if it's worn, you can easily go to a bike shop and they can easily put that back on for you, or can buy one and that can go on. This is the wire that connects to the actual handle. Sometimes if your bike's been in the rain, if it's been kind of dry and rusty, this might be kind of gross, and a bike shop can definitely help you with that. And so you want to make sure though that both the front and the back brakes are nice and tight and not worn, particularly, I like to say particularly during the winter time when you might need some of that control a little more. Actually, yeah, I mean, for me, it's the winter time, but I suppose some people don't like to use their brakes and just slip and slide. So for me, those are like my pads. I usually repair or replace them maybe every like 6 months or so. I kind of am weird about my front and my back. I don't really balance them right, but so usually around 6 months or so, go to the bike shop, get a tune-up, and they usually replacing brake pads is usually one of the tune-up items that bike shops do for everyone. And Karen over here, it looks like you have a different type of brake system. I have pads. What kind of brake system do you have that you're showing right there, Karen?
This is disc brakes. So instead of on the rim and the brakes being attached up here, it's a disc and a caliper. This is similar to what's on a motorcycle. They function the same, like when the wheel's rolling, you squeeze the brakes and this thing moves and squeezes the disc. It's hard to see, but inside the caliper there is, you can kind of see it there, there's pads that squeeze that disc. These ones don't need to be replaced as often. I would say every 1 to 2 years for me. You can adjust some disc brakes, like there's these little dials on this model. There's also sometimes a little barrel adjuster. As they wear, you can make them tighter. These brakes have a cable that actuates them, which is similar to a lot of bikes. Some bikes actually have, instead of a cable going through this housing, it's oil. They're hydraulic brakes. That's a little more. I really like disc brakes because when you roll through mud and water, it doesn't really affect the disc very much. So they work about the same whether it's wet or dry in almost any weather.
Yeah, disc brakes are really nice. I would recommend them if you're going to be investing in a bike here in Pittsburgh. When I've had bikes with them, they work really well. But if you don't have a disc brake, it's not a big deal. You know, brake pads, the kind that I have on my bike, are totally fine too. But if you want to upgrade, it's always a nice upgrade to get the disc brakes for all your needs, commuting needs, mountain bike needs, all that good stuff. Karen, what's next? Are we done? Any questions about brakes from anyone? Any in the chat? I didn't see any in the chat yet, but if not, we're gonna move over to C's of the ABCs. What's C's, Karen?
All right, so we had air, brakes, and next is the chain.
Very important, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people's frustrations with their bikes come from the chain. If it's squeaking, if the chain falls off, those are things that, one thing that's good to note is the chain is basically a wear item, just the same as the brake pads. It needs to be replaced. I usually replace mine at least once a year, if not every 6 months. What happens if you let the chain wear out, it starts to wear out the cassette back here and it wears out the chain rings. So if you wait too long and your chain starts to skip or fall off all the time, it has already made these things also wear out and you'll have to replace all of it, which gets expensive. Chains are pretty cheap though. They're like 20, 30 bucks. How do you know when you have to replace your chain? There is a handy tool that you can get, also pretty cheap. I want to say this one is probably like 10 bucks or less. You can get fancier ones too. So basically this measures how much the chain has been worn. And you just drop it in. There's like one end you drop into the link there. And then the other end goes in, and depending on how far it goes down, that tells you how much the chain has been worn. This one's like right on the edge. It's probably about time to replace it. I happen to have an old chain that is very worn out, and we'll see what that looks like.
Like if it's really rusty and if it's like super saggy, I mean, not saggy, but if it's like what Karen is showing you, it's probably time. You can easily bring this into any bike store. Even if you do a tune-up, it's usually one of the things that the bike attendants will look for is your chain and your brakes. And so they will tell you it needs to be replaced. And if so, as Karen said, it's maybe 10 to 20 bucks, depending on the chain that you have. So it shouldn't be that hard if you just bring it over to a bike shop for sure.
Well, this is hard to do with one hand. So that chain is worn out. It would go all the way up to the max.
Yeah.
Very worn out. So something else to think about, more common maintenance with your chain is to put lube on it. It doesn't squeak and make a lot of noise to prevent it from getting rusty. What type of lube? There's a few different kinds.
What type do you use? Are you using the dry one?
This is a dry lube. It's some funky, has like plastic in it. Oh, and Bruce has wet lube.
Yeah, Phil Tenacious Oil. It's a brand. You'll see them at every bike store. But if you go into any bike store and ask for bike lube for your chain, they'll give you something and they'll say, do you want wet? Do you want dry? I just prefer wet, but some people like dry. And what you do is you just kind of boop, 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 put it along your chain, put a little thing. And I do this maybe once every 2 months. Maybe you might want to do it a little more often and clean your chain during this winter, because during the winter, what happens with the wet lube at least is that a lot of dirt, a lot of salt, and a lot of stuff will stick to your chain because it's wet. So you might want to change it do it every 1 to 2 months or even more, and clean it during the winter months is what in my experience. But this is a nice, this one I got from Kindred, and it was just $10. Kindred Cycles in the strip, it was $10. So I think this is a good investment if you're going to be looking at commuting maybe 2 to 3 times a week, or maybe even 1 day a week during the summer. This is a good investment right here.
Yeah, I like that kind of oil as well for protecting other things. It's good for bolts,
right,
like this, to keep things from getting rusted. Kind of see some rust on my bike. I did put some Tenacious Oil on there. So yeah, wet and dry lube, what is the difference? A wet lube is sort of like a regular oil, and it's kind of viscous, meaning sticky, and it'll coat the chain and stay on there for quite a while. A dry lube starts out looking much like a wet lube does. It's also kind of viscous, but it dries, and what it is like a waxy kind of stuff in a solvent. So when it dries, it leaves like a harder, dry looking wax coating on your chain. And I don't know which one is better. It's kind of personal preference and where you tend to ride. I've just gotten the habit of using dry lube. How do you know when to put lube on your chain? Bruce, do you have any tips for that?
You will feel it. I feel like you will feel it. If your chain is just like a little sticky, it's not really smooth, and maybe making some noise, add some lube and you will feel like you are on a new bike. You're going to be biking on air. It's going to be amazing. You'll immediately feel the difference. I would also recommend cleaning the chain first. So what I usually do is get an old dirty rag, whatever rag you got, and just put it on the chain and just crank your tires. Yep, like what Karen has there, because you want to get the stuff off, all that grit, all that asphalt, all that dirt. You want to get it off, and then be able to have a clean surface to apply that lube on, or whatever kind of lubricant you're putting on. So this is something I should be doing more often, but I would definitely recommend it once every 2 to 3 months, if not more often, if you're really into it. That'll help keep your bike nice and smooth on your commutes, on your weekend rides. I don't know, any other things about chains, Karen? That's kind of the laywoman's kind of things on chains. Anything else?
The one thing I would say is that many people put too much lube on the chain. That's maybe the most.
Yes.
Other than not lubing it at all. And you hear those people going down the street, squeak.
Exactly.
Past that stage and on. If you look, this chain is actually lubed, but it's pretty dry and it's shiny. I'm wiping my fingers on it and it's not coming away. Because put the lube on, I'll put 1 drop per link, just like that. And then I'll take the chain and do it backwards for I don't know, a minute or so to make sure it's worked in there. And then, this is important, I take the rag and wipe the lube off. That sounds crazy, but what happens is the lube is now down in all the little links where the moving parts are. And there's still a thin film on the outside. Unless you take soap and water, you're not going to get that off. The thin film will protect it against rust, but it's not enough to attract dirt and gross stuff. So that's pretty important. It actually looks fairly dry. I mean, it will still make my pants legs dirty, but it's not going to leave like huge black marks everywhere. Okay, so that's A, B, and C.
Excellent.
Bruce, what's next? Do you want to talk about
actually we have someone, we actually have a question in the chat box. Somebody,
okay.
and this was actually, it's a good segue, because the next thing I wanted to talk about was, now that we have your bike ready, what do you need to get ready personally on yourself, whether it is what you're wearing, what you're going to be bringing. And one of the questions is from Caroline, who is a pit staff member and public health student, who asked general helmet tip recommendations and where they might be able to find one in and around Bloomfield in the East End. Karen, do you have any recommendations? I would definitely say helmet is definitely recommended. It's not necessarily required by law here, but obviously if you're going to be on the road, it's definitely something to as a safety measure. I usually just go to a lot of the local bike shops in the area. Usually have a good selection. I tend to like Kindred Cycles over in the Strip. A lot of people like Thick Bikes, which is in the south side. Then you also have Cranix. I don't know if Cranix has any bike helmets, but they are on Penn Avenue in Garfield, across from like a Banta T-bar. And then you also have Iron City Bikes. They were they are in Oakland still. Is that right? Or did they move? I forget. They're not in Oakland. Not in Oakland anymore. Where's Iron City now? Are they in Lawrenceville? There's one in Lawrenceville next to Frank Schwer on Butler Street, I believe. But any of those shops will definitely have one. Like a nice helmet. If you just want to go kind of generic, I'm sure Target. I know a lot of my friends have gone to Target and just got really generic, good fitting helmets that are good for like weekends. They might not be the most like, sexiest or the like best designer ones, but they will do their job in case of an impact or case of an accident or crash or anything. So I would definitely recommend that. Anna in the chat from BikePGH just put a link to a guide for how to find a helmet that fits you and how it's a good fit versus bad fit versus too big, too small. So definitely check out that link that Anna just put up. Any other helmet tips that you might have, Karen?
Yeah, I think that the guide that Anna put is probably going to say this, but a general rule of thumb, and I actually happen to have brought a helmet out here. I'll put it on. It's recommendations for where to get one. Good rule of thumb is, it's good to try a helmet on. This is something that I like to purchase from a local shop, just because it's tough to try a helmet on when you purchase it online and return it. But there's a 2-finger rule. Well, first of all, when it goes on, there's a dial adjustment in the back of many helmets that tightens or loosens. There's like a band running around the inside. When you get that adjusted, you should be able to put it on and shake your head around, and it stays put for the most part, even with unbuckled. Then there's a 2-finger rule. 2 fingers above your eyebrows, 2 fingers under the chin strap when it's strapped. The strap should go like on either side of your ear and meet just under, like 2 fingers under your earlobe. And that's the adjustment is something else that a bike shop can help you with, which is another nice reason to go visit your local shop if you can.
Okay, very quickly back to lube. We have a question from Facebook. When the season/temperature changes, do you have a personal preference when switching from dry to wet? I typically start around now for wet, but curious what others like.
I tend to use dry.
I'm gonna let you handle that, Karen.
What's that?
Go ahead. It's you. This is all you. It is all you, Karen.
I tend to use dry lube year round, but I do put it on much more often in the winter. It'll get washed away more often. Bruce, do you find the same thing true for wet lube?
Yeah, it just tends to get dirty a lot more during the wintertime. A lot more things stick to it. So I feel like I'm finding myself cleaning and replacing a lot more often during the wintertime. But I stick with wet just because it's what I have and I really like it. And I don't really, I don't need a, I don't really have a crazy need to get a little fussy with my lube, since it's just a beater, like a little vintage bike that I have. So I would definitely say that though, you do need to prepare when seasons do change. Otherwise, though, I just stick with wet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You know what? That brings up another point. There's a person's way to clean your chain, which is to just douse it in lube and then wipe. And just the
Just
action,
dip
like
your
the
bike
solvent
in a
gets
tub of lube and you'll be good. Just
right. But so that it's like way too much, and then just wipe, and it won't get every bit of dirt off, but it'll go a long way to get some of the nastiness off. So
great question. Any other questions? Because it's 2:30. We have maybe 10 to 15 minutes left, and we definitely want to get into like what to carry in a bike bag and kind of what things to carry with you if you're commuting to work or anything like that. Oh, we have a question here in the chat. Maybe we should answer that first. Maggie, who's a pit staff member, is nervous about loading. Oh, good question. Loading her bike on the front of a bus. Is there any place to practice this or any recommendations? This is a great question. I do know that the Port Authority does have a traveling bus bike rack that they bring to events, but I think due to COVID, they're probably not having that program at the moment. They usually have it like at farmers markets. And I think there might be one of those, it might be downtown, but I'm not sure if they still have it out because it requires touching, and I'm not sure. Go ahead, Karen.
Anna know where they
I'm not sure. Yeah, I do know that the Port Authority as well as Bike Pittsburgh definitely do have links to YouTube videos that show you how to do it. It is definitely, I will say, as someone who uses a bike on a bus very often, especially during the wintertime, I do it very often. It is very stressful at the very beginning, like the first 2, 3, 4 times you do it. You're like, one, I'm holding up everybody. I don't even know if it's secure. 2, I'm like watching the bike because I don't want it to fall off and get run over. So I definitely admit it is very stressful, but in the like 6 years that I've put a bike on a bus, there has not been an issue, really. It's you kind of like sit there and you watch. What I like to do though, and this is one tip that I have, is that I always make sure the bus driver sees me. So you're not just stepping in front of a bus and they're like, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm putting a bike on. They're like, oh, okay. Put it on. Once you go on and you pay your fare at the front door, then stand near the front door. Like, don't go to the back of the bus. Stay in the front door. And when your bus stop is coming, just let the bus driver know that you are going to be taking off your bus at that stop. So they know not to pull up too close to the car in front of them. They know that you're going to be stepping in front of the bus. So the whole thing is basically just communicating with the bus driver as far as that portion of it. As far as loading the bike on, you just have to practice. Take some time. The bus drivers, especially now, I feel like because there's not much pressure, as far as ridership goes, that they probably don't mind spending an extra 20 seconds at a bus stop letting you put on your bike. So unfortunately, yeah, right now the program, I don't think Port 3 has it going, but when they do, definitely check it up on, I'm sure online they have the program and where that traveling bus rack is going to, usually farmers markets, but check that out. Any other suggestions, Karen, about putting a bike on a bus?
No, I think Anna just shared a link to a helpful Bike Pittsburgh video about how to do it. So that'll help a lot.
It's stressful. You just got to do it. It's great.
Yeah, it's very handy. That's
Yeah.
what, and it is a good thing to remember. You can always use the bus to bail out. So that's one thing to carry with you when you're commuting, especially when you're getting used to it, is make sure you have your bus pass or whatever you need to get on the bus, extra money or however. You want to talk about?
Great idea. Let's do it.
All right. Lights. They're very. I think Bike Pittsburgh recommends at the least one front and one rear light. And that the front one should be white. The rear light should be red. Sorry, I'm trying to turn this on so you guys can see.
I think, Karen, that in the state of Pennsylvania, I believe you actually have to have a front light and it has to be white.
Okay.
The back light is definitely recommended. It's very important, but legally, I guess you don't really, it's not legal. You don't have to as a traffic law. So I would definitely recommend that if you're doing it if you're riding at night or expected to ride early in the morning, even like when it's dusky, it's always nice to have two lights, a front white and a back red one as well.
Yep. Yeah, and especially this time of year when it starts to get dark early, I always go through an adjustment period, not only wearing more clothes, but like remembering to charge my lights. That's kind of a challenge every fall. But I like to have, especially for the winter. I mean, this summer I usually have one front, one rear. In the winter, I'll have it like two fronts and three rear, just so I have redundancy. If one of them goes out, at least there's still something going on. And also just for more visibility. Usually I have like one of each mounted on the bike, sometimes two red rear ones on the bike. I also put a rear light on my bag so that it's higher up and maybe even a little bit more visible than the one on the seat. My helmet also has a set of lights. Fell off, but this is a front and rear set that you can get that this is really handy because I can actually use my head to point that front light at people and make sure they see me. This is probably the best investment I made for winter commuting. I think it was like, I can't remember. I want to say like $50, $75. It's a little more expensive, but it's awesome. And it's lasted like 10 years. All of these ones are rechargeable, which is handy because you can have cords at home and at your office or even carry them with you. Some people like to use battery lights because the batteries actually can last longer than a charged light. Any other tips, Bruce, you have for lights?
Karen, you're like a disco ball going down the street, like in the middle of the night. It's kind of great how many lights you have. I will say that I should probably have more lights, but I have a very basic front light. This is, I believe it was maybe $60. I think lights are important. So if you can invest a little more in one, I would definitely recommend it. This is around $60 to $80 is the one that I got. You could definitely find less expensive ones that might have, a little less power, might not last as long, but I recommend a good one, front and back. So this one is one that you just put around the handlebar. It's pretty easy. So it goes and I just carry it in my bag during the day. It doesn't take up much room. And then when I'm ready to go, I just put it on here. One-handed is impossible. So I would recommend having two hands, but you put it on. Yeah, it goes right there. Nice and bright. It flashes. And then I have one in the back that I actually put on my belt loop. I like to walk around with it. I feel like sometimes if it's on the bike, I've had issues where it might have fallen off because I didn't secure the things correctly. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to wear it on my belt loop. And so that's how I go around. And this is just a standard one. I've actually had this one for a long time. So everything's like gone, the little flips and everything. But I've had this one for a long time. So it's a good investment to have. Other than that, though, I believe you also sometimes have reflectors on the wheels. Some bikes come with that. That's always a good idea. Some people have reflectors on their pedals. Those are always nice to have as well. And sometimes they have reflectors on the front and the back. And so those wouldn't be lights, but those are reflectors. And I believe that a lot of bikes come with them. They're good to have as well as a way for people to see you at night and to be safe. Any other questions or any other things we missed regarding, oh, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so two questions. One, do you take your lights off when you park your bike in public places? And two, someone from Facebook asks, any recs for cheap but decent lights? My light game is very, very weak.
Good questions. It depends on where I'm parking. Parking on CMU campus, if I am like in the garage, I don't really bother to take the lights off, but if I'm somewhere with more foot traffic, I do take the lights off. Many lights, most I would say have, like this one has a quick release. So I can, see if I can with one hand. There's like a little lever. Maybe I can't do it with one hand. Anyway, the light comes off the mount really easily. Same here. This one's basically a rubber band. Bruce, how about good light Rex? Do you have any like?
I don't
Also,
know any
while
specific
we're on
brands.
recommendations, also lock Rex. Recommendations.
I saw
lock.
that. I saw that.
Yeah, okay, great.
I saw that chat. I think it's great thing to go over as well. I don't have any specific bike brands of lights, but I definitely I always take mine off. I'm from Los Angeles where I biked a lot, and so I just have this. I'm always like, take everything off your bike. Someone's gonna take it. So I would definitely recommend ones that Karen was talking about that you can easily take on and off your bike. Ones that usually have a USB charge for me is nice. I can charge it at work, I can charge it at home. And ones that have different kind of strobes. I technically like to have mine strobing on and off when I am in the road. If I'm like in a park or something on a trail, then I just usually leave my light just not strobing but on. That's always a nice feature. If you're going to be buying one, it could run from $60 to $80. But as I said, my lights I've had for maybe 5-6 years, so it's a good investment, and they probably last a lot longer too. So I like to take them with me though off of the bike. And for, I guess the other one was locks, was it? I always go with U-lock. So the U-lock is the shape of the lock, and the one brand that usually makes U-locks is called Kryptonite. There might be other brands that make a U-lock, but a U-lock is known for being really hard to cut, really hard to break. And the ones that I have is a key. So I have a little key. Some of them come with like a little lock, like combination lock. There's four numbers, but this brand, Kryptonite U-lock, it's hefty. It's really heavy. So that's kind of a con and negative, but I've always never had issues. And I know friends who have gone really nice locks that unfortunately in big cities have been broken. I always say U-lock, 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 U-lock. It's heavy, but it's always, you're nothing, no one's taking this, right? So Karen, do you have any recommendations on locks?
I mean, what you said that it's heavy is good. That's usually a measure that it's pretty tough. You know, lights, you can get decent functioning lights, probably a set for, I don't know, as cheap as like 25 or 30 bucks, but a lock, I feel like you want to spend a little more money, like 50 maybe. But honestly, the shops that we recommended, Kindred, Thick, Iron City, any of the local shops can help steer you in the right direction of like, you know, what to do. And like for lights, as you get more expensive, you're going to get more power and probably also longer battery life. For locks, as you get more expensive, you're going to get like stronger, more resistant to being broken into. So, you know, you always have to weigh how much you want to spend with what you get out of things, but like that's your choices basically. So do we want to talk about how to carry stuff?
Oh, sorry, Nick, go ahead though. Nick, you had something?
I'll give a plug to Bike Pittsburgh is doing an Operation Illumination, which is a light giveaway, September 30th in Allegheny Commons. If you go on Bike Pittsburgh's social media or their website, you can find more details on how to get free lights.
Good tip.
Yeah, we got 5 more minutes. Do we have
So,
any other questions? Because we went to Karen and I went to cover one more thing before we're up here. I'm assuming it's like 2:45 is when we're going to be done here. So, any other questions? Otherwise, Karen, we wanted to talk about like what to do if you want to carry things with you. Right, you're going to work. You might have a lunch. You might have a work laptop. You might have something that you want to carry with you. What are some ways to carry stuff on a bike or on yourself? Karen, do you want to go first? Do you have any recommendations on ways to carry things?
Sure. There's kind of a couple different philosophies. My bike, as it's currently set up, I don't have rear racks. I don't even have mounting for rear racks. I've been rolling around lately with this little bag attached to the frame, which is handy. To be honest, in normal times, I probably wouldn't leave that on because I wouldn't want to leave this in a public place. So most of the time, I just have bottle cages on this bike, and then I use a backpack. And this is kind of like my briefcase. It's always got the light on it. it's always got like inside there's a divider with business cards, pens. I put my wallet in there, tissues, handy bottle opener. You never know when you're going to need that. And like my laptop, lunch, sometimes also a change of clothes fits in there. The problem with that is it's nice sometimes not to have something on your back. And I've made mistakes where I've dressed in nicer clothes and then put that backpack on, and it like
Yeah,
it
all of
ruined
us,
a
all of
nice
us.
shirt.
Yeah, we've all been there carrying where we're like, oh yeah, well, let's just wear a backpack, and then you get to a meeting and your entire back is soaked, and you're like, why
Exactly.
did I do that?
Yeah. So some people like to do more what like Bruce's style of bike. If you want to show off what you've got going on there.
Yeah, sure. So what I did was, I just like what Karen said, I used to wear a backpack, and I realized that I hated wearing a backpack on my bike. Like I just will not wear a backpack. So what I did was I got a bike that has a rear rack. This is a little more of a custom fancy one, but you could definitely get any rear rack from any of those shops for easily, I don't know, maybe $30. They have, or even cheaper. But a rear rack is great because then you could do things such as put a bag onto it. So this is a bag, a bike bag. They have different brands. This one, and it's a bike bag because as you see on the back, there's these clips, and the clips go onto here. Right, so it should be pretty easy. I can't do it with one hand right now, but a lot of bike bags are great because then you could just shove everything in it, right? So I have a bunch of, I have my water bottle, I have my tubes in there, spare tubes, and you could bring it into a meeting. It looks nice. Some other people also like to put things on top of the rack, so you can definitely do that. Just do a tie around it. What do you call it? Not a squeegee, a good tie on. What
Zip
when
tie?
I'm thinking slinky, a zip tie is slinky. I don't know what I'm talking about. A bungee. Thank you, Maggie. Yes, a bungee. Put a bungee right on top. Sorry. This is a rear rack. Some people also have a front rack. So the front rack, I have a basket, but some people actually have a rack and they're able to put a basket on the front. I know a lot of people that like that because they like to have the weight of something like a backpack on the front of their bike. And it's a very different feeling. But I like to have this bag. I like to have my bag because I could just carry it inside meetings, carry it around. It has, has a pen in here. I have an extra face mask, for anyone. I have some Tylenol, like just usual things, like a fork, things like that. And this is a little small for groceries, but I do have bigger bags that I can carry groceries on, and they go right here, super easy. Baskets. I'm trying to make. Let me see. Oh, here we go. I'm trying to make baskets a thing again because I feel like people think that only older cyclists have baskets and it's not sexy or children. And I'm like, no, baskets are so usable. Like you have something, you have a face mask or you have a thing, you just throw it in there. Just throw it in the basket. So useful. So I definitely recommend that too if you're just carrying something really light to the office. Carrying a 12-pack easily goes in a basket. Other than that, though, that's kind of some ways to carry things and use your bike more as a cargo bike or as a grocery bike or as a work bike. Any other questions about that? Because I see that's 2:45. Any other questions or comments about how to get things onto your bike?
You know what? Real quick. Well, maybe we have questions, but I wanted to just talk about what we carry to be prepared. Bare minimum, I carry a pump. The things to fix a flat. So pump, tire levers, a spare tube, and is it in there? No, it's not in there, but a patch kit. Those are the bare minimum ingredients to fix a flat. I also usually carry a small multi-tool to adjust things as I go. It's handy for, this one has a chain tool, but all the hex wrenches to adjust brakes and things like that. I also throw in zip ties to like put things together if things go really awry. Bruce, you also mentioned some personal items that you carry, like these days, face mask, hand sanitizer is good. Lip balm, I always have like multiple lip balms in my.
And at the at the very
Anything else?
beginning, I actually carried around a bike map with me because I didn't have a smartphone. So if you're trying to navigate the streets of Pittsburgh and you know, maybe want to carry a map with you, that's always something good, since you don't want to get lost in these little streets here. But other than that, though, I keep it kind of light. I keep it very minimum, as you said, Karen. I bring a tube, I bring a patch kit, I bring levers. Even if I don't, though, I know that there are bike shops around that if for some reason I do have a flat while I'm on a ride on a Sunday, I can easily stop at any one of those shops. So knowing where your shops are, your local shops in the cities are, is actually really helpful. So there's a handful. If you know where they are, you can basically go anywhere in the city and not worry that you'll get stranded. And if not, you can easily hop on a bus with your bike too. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone here for Karen or myself? Team basket, right, Caroline? Caroline is all about baskets. Me too. Team basket. I'm gonna hashtag that now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, doesn't seem like there are any other questions. Thank you so much, Bruce and Karen. Appreciate your what you've shared with us. So this afternoon at 4 o'clock, we've got an e-bike session with Adam Solar Rides. Tuesday, we have 2 sessions about traffic skills, about how to bike safely in the city if you're not used to biking in the city. Wednesday, we'll go into more detail about what to wear and accessories for your bike. Thursday, we'll have a general tabling session around lunchtime, as well as specific sessions about each campus. And then Friday, we'll review route planning, how to access the trails, and group rides. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Team basket.